Welcome and thank you for joining us for our National Park Talk. My name is Kate Smallwood. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Adventures on the Gorge, and I'll be moderating during this webinar. We've just passed the one-year anniversary of the new River Gorge National Park and Preserve designation. During the next hour, we'll talk with Senator Capito and industry leaders about the first year as a national park and what the designation means for the future of New River Gorge area. I'd first like to introduce Chelsea Ruby, Cabinet Secretary of the West Virginia Department of Tourism.
Hello. Thank you.
Hi, Chelsea. Thanks so much for joining.
Absolutely. I appreciate the invitation.
So my first question for you is, how is the state of tourism in West Virginia right now? And do you see any connection to the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve designation?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen a tremendous growth. Let me back up about 3 years. We did a huge rebrand of the state. We have had tremendous support by the governor, the legislature, and all leaders at every level of government. Because of that, we have tripled the budget. We have started doing things that we have never done before, and we've seen tremendous results. So in the 3 years leading up to the pandemic, we saw about a 15% growth rate for traveler spending in West Virginia. That is an incredible rate. It is far above the national rate of growth and something we were really excited about. Fast forward to the pandemic, and then where everyone's saying travel is going to end, there were these huge reports of United States travel being down 40-50%, projections saying that we wouldn't recover until 2025 or 2026. I'm here to tell you that as of last month, we have returned to normal occupancy levels in West Virginia. We've seen a lot of shifts in traveler movement. We're seeing people changing their preferences. So they're changing the types of places they want to stay in. They're planning their trips differently. The timing of their trips is different, but they are still traveling, and they're traveling to states like West Virginia. 2/3 of people say that the pandemic gave them a greater appreciation for the great outdoors. We've seen that. All of us see it. I know I've seen it personally in my life. The outdoors has become an even more important part of our daily life since the pandemic. And we think that's something that's going to continue, but it's certainly something that has helped West Virginia and something that was starting to help West Virginia before the pandemic, but now we're really moving faster. The National Park designation, just a little over a year ago now, has been an incredible blessing to the state. National park designations are sort of the gold standard for tourism. Folks across the country and around the world look at those designations as kind of the highest level that you can get as a tourism destination. So this designation not only helped the New River Gorge and the region, but it helps the whole state because it really elevates our profile. We have seen national and international publications, one after another, come out and say West Virginia is the top place to visit in 2022. In fact, we are the only state that has made all of those top lists. So Condé Nast, Lonely Planet, all of them, we've been on them, and we are officially one of the world's greatest places to see. So I couldn't be more appreciative to our congressional delegation for the designation, and I think it is going to continue to bring a huge increase of visitors to the area.
That's wonderful to hear. Kind of talking about in-state tourists versus out-of-state tourists, what's your understanding of the impact of in-state tourists versus out-of-state tourists, especially as it relates to the gorge?
Yeah, so that's something we look at really closely. We use a couple of different data sources, but the best one for kind of movement is one that looks at cell phone tracking data. So it's looking at how people are moving around the state and around the country. And what we've seen since the pandemic is we've seen a great increase in both in-state and out-of-state. So especially early on in the pandemic, we saw a lot of movement in state. We saw more movement in state than we'd ever seen before, meaning that people were doing small road trips around the state. We've continued to see increased movement in state, but we're also seeing movement out of state. Of course, with this designation, we've seen about a 30% increase in park visitation into the region. And a lot of that is because of this designation, because of this national attention. We have had travel writers from nearly every publication in the US here to visit, and they're all excited to keep coming back. The great thing about tourism in West Virginia is we know that 87% of people who come to the state come back. So our hardest challenge is getting new people, getting people to think about West Virginia as a tourism destination. And this gives us one more calling card, one more reason for people to think about our state.
That's so wonderful to hear. We talk a lot about outdoor activities that are great in the spring and summer, but how does the New River Gorge National Park fit into a 4-season tourism plan?
Yeah, so tourism in West Virginia is about a $4.7 billion industry, meaning about 4.7 is spent each year in the state from tourists, whether that's in state or out of state. The gorge is certainly a part of that, but one of the things that we've seen is that we have really been able to build visitation year round. Historically, there was a lot of emphasis placed on spring and summer, and we have really increased what we're doing in the fall and the winter. The park specifically, I think people are really familiar with what to do in the summer and what to do in the fall with rafting and all the things that happen in the gorge in that time of year. But one season that I think gets overlooked is winter. If you haven't been down in the gorge and seen what it looks like without leaves on the trees, it's something you've got to do. It's really a spectacular place. And like all of West Virginia, you can get a completely different experience in each of the 4 seasons. So that is a great benefit to West Virginia. We're one of, only a few states that can really claim that they can get people all 4 seasons.
And then last question for you, how can stakeholders make the best experience for visitors in the gorge and the surrounding area?
Yeah, so if you think about the national park in West Virginia, one of the greatest things about it is that it's so large, it's so expansive, it's multiple counties, it's free. But one thing that I think that we have to be really careful about is thinking about how our park is different than other parks. So if you go visit a traditional national park, there's an entrance and an exit. You get in line, you go through the park, you know what to do. Ours is very different. As you know, there's entrance and exit points all across those counties. There are numerous ways in and out. There are many, many things to do. And that gives us a better experience. That's a different story. That makes this park unique. But with it, I think also comes some challenges of we have to make sure that visitors who are coming to the area understand the park boundaries, understand what's available, know how to get from point A to point B, know how to find those trails. So that's something that we are working with and we will continue working with stakeholders on, is figuring out how do we really capitalize on that uniqueness of this park and how do we make it the best visitor experience that we can.
I love that. That's a great answer. Thank you so much. We are taking questions from the audience. So if anyone has anything for Chelsea specifically, feel free to type that up and we'll get it over to you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Next, I'd like to introduce Roger Wilson Roger Wilson is on here. He'll be on here in just a bit. Next up is Leslie Reynolds, Acting Superintendent of the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve. She's joined by Eve West, Chief of Interpretation, Visitor Services, and Cultural Resources of the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve. And they are joined by Danny Twilley, Assistant Dean of the Brad and Elise Smith Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative at West Virginia University. Thanks to all of you for being here.
Thank you, Kate. It's a pleasure.
It looks like we have just been joined by the United States Senator Shelley Moore Capito. So I apologize, Senator. I know you are in the middle of voting, so we're going to quickly switch over to you, if that's okay, and we will circle back to the National Park Service and to Danny Twilley. Senator, how are you? Thank you for joining us today.
I am great, and this is my favorite thing to talk about in the entire state. Certainly we have good news, economic development news locally, but it's the New River Gorge, as you all know, is something that I've taken great pride in, and the National Park designation as well. So I want to say thank you to you, Kate, and to the Rivers Coalition, and to Adventures on the Gorge for sponsoring this. I'm glad to see Chelsea's on and many others. And I'm just really thrilled with the way the Park Services has just stepped up to the plate here. So, thank you for inviting me. And I am in the middle of votes, but I'm going to stay on as long as I possibly can.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So my first question for you is, do you have a favorite memory of the New River Gorge?
Well, certainly being a Charleston resident since the mid 60s, as many of you know, my father was governor during that time and was very integral into the construction of the New River Gorge Bridge. So those are my earliest memories, really, of being there, going to. At that point, Hawks Nest was just becoming online. I remember my mother getting on the tram at Hawks Nest. She was flipping out because it was kind of scaring her, I think. But then going to the bridge, I was there for the bridge opening, walking across the bridge, seeing the beautiful gorge, going down the river several times with, oh gosh, I'll have to think of the outfitter I went. The very first one that was there almost with the Dragons. We went down the river for our first experience, and it lived up to every expectation. But I think generationally, I was there for the 40th anniversary of the construction of the bridge, and I was able to bring my granddaughter there, and we've since
Aw.
hiked some of the trails. So I have great memories, and certainly want to make some more as time goes on.
That's so great. Well, fast forward a few years, can you give a brief synopsis on how the legislation of the National Park and Preserve designation came about?
Sure, and I will make this brief because I couldn't make it very long, but basically it was total ground up. I heard from many folks throughout the Fayette, Raleigh County areas about what this designation could mean in terms of economic development, in terms of attractiveness to our state, and just the excitement that it would generate. And, I'm going to be honest with you, in the beginning, I was sort of like, well, let me see the local, sometimes you think these things are great ideas, but let me hear locally what this would mean. And let me hear from the state what this would mean. We had a lot of letters, a lot of support. And then we went to, I put legislation in. I put legislation in early. Congresswoman Miller, and then Senator Manchin. We all joined together in this effort, and we had hearings. And then we also looked at this whole park preserve concept as the best way to address local issues. And then we had several open meetings. We had one at Tamarack, we had one at the park headquarters, and several other. And I had my staff very actively, both Washington and Charleston staff, actively on the ground. And then working with the Park Service were very, very helpful. And I was able at the end to get working with our leadership here in the Senate and in the House to be able to kind of squeeze it in there at the last of last year or year before last to get that designation in, and really proud of what we were able to accomplish together. It was a team effort, and I'm so proud of what it's resulted in.
And I think you speak for every West Virginian when you say it's a pride that we take in having that national park designation. Right. I think my next question were what were the keys to your success in championing the legislation, but I think you kind of hit on all of those points. Is there anything else?
I mean, I think it's important that the people most hugely impacted, I'm not saying it exactly the way I want to, but the ones that are going to have the greatest impacts are the ones that we wanted to make sure were satisfied with the direction that their voices were heard. And I think we did that. And at the same time, I think we were very methodical as we moved the legislation through the committees. We worked, as I said, Senator Manchin and I worked well together with Congresswoman Miller on the other side. So it was a win-win, I think, for all of us.
That's great. Well, just 1 year later, what do you see as the successes and challenges since the new designation?
Well, I think the success bear out in the numbers. I didn't hear Chelsea's report, but we stay very close with her. I understand the visitorship, the repeat visitorships are much, much higher. The original statistics were saying that if you get the national park designation, that it will result in 20 to 30% more people visiting. Well, that's come true. And I think that that in and of itself is very exciting. The last time I stopped by, I went out on the overlook, and actually it was a snowy day, and I went over the overlook at the center there. And as I looked through the license plates of all the cars that were in the parking lot, they're from everywhere.
Right.
And so to me, as a West Virginian, what a sense of pride I have knowing that that they're seeing a great part of West Virginia that has such history, not just on the economic and coal side, but in terms of the flora and the fauna, the things that are so historic in that park, and we're going to learn more and more about it. The challenges are partly what we addressed in the legislation. Parking is the last time I was there and hiked the endless trail. It was tough finding a place to park, but we did put provisions in there for expansions. I understand. I would like to get an update on what is going on there with the parking expansions, but I know that's very, very critical. I think upkeep of the trails is going to be critical with more and more people. So that's a capacity issue. Are there enough people working with and for the Park Service to be able to afford those and make that national park what we want it to be? We passed another bill called the Great American Outdoors Act, which will deal with a lot more funds for national parks, other national rivers and other things. So there should be funding there, but you have to get it directed to your specific area. I think that's an issue. Local capacity is going to be an issue. Are there enough hotel rooms? Are there enough, gas stations, eateries, all of those things? Because I think if there's something that turns you off more than anything is to have a bad experience or an inadequate experience. And we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to prevent those. And I'm sure there'll be more problems along the way. And that's what we need to hear and how we can help the Park Service meet those challenges.
Absolutely. And then what's one thing that you'd like your colleagues in Congress to know about the New River Gorge other exceptional places throughout the state?
Well, it's interesting. The pandemic has really helped our state in terms of having people in the DC region realize what a jewel they have just, 50 miles to the west to get easily. I've talked to a lot of people that have been up through the Canaan Valley, have seen the beautiful Canaan Valley refuge, where we have a new Fish and Wildlife Visitor Center that we help to get going, is absolutely beautiful. I think Seneca Rocks and that part of the climbing atmosphere that we have in our state, coupled with what you can do with the gorge. I'm going to admit, last time I went out on the Endless Trail and went out to some of those viewpoints, I'm like, how do people do that? I guess it's for the young, maybe, or very skilled. I'll leave it that way. I think that any chance I get, I had a West Virginia lunch for the senators, and I featured the New River Gorge in that, but I also featured Shepherdstown because there is a national historical park there, obviously at Harper's Ferry, that a lot of DC folks take advantage of. So the DC, Baltimore, Richmond area is such fertile ground for all of our tourism. And I think you see it resulting in more bookings, more people going down the rivers, and all kinds of great, more people visiting the park. So DC's I know Chelsea does this because I see the advertising that occurs from all of you all, and I think it's the best place to be because it's close and it's not a week away, it's not a flight away, it's a short drive away.
Very true. Well, perhaps the most important question, and I know you've touched on this a bit, but what's next? What's next for the New River Gorge region?
Well, I think improvement of the areas that we see are overloaded is next, I think. And certainly I want to get with the superintendent and to see what their views are, because that's going to be the most important. I would like to see some development and some emphasis on I will say the southern part down by near the Hinton area, where it comes in on the south. There's a lot of activity, obviously, in the northern area. And expansions of the park could be something that we might look at. I think also I'm going to want to hear how the park preserve concept is working. Are our hunters and our fishermen able to get, not everybody's going to be happy, we know that, but at least do they feel like they're getting listened to in a fair shake, and how that's going. But I think also a capacity in terms of staffing is going to be critical.
Yep. Great answer. Thank you so much. Well, we have a couple of questions from the audience.
Okay.
Senator, what's your favorite activity in the park?
Well, you know, the couple of times I've gone down the river, I think have been monumental for me. And now that I'm a grandmother, I think that I want to try one of those family-friendly rides because our grandchildren are still quite young. You know, hiking during the pandemic was a wonderful activity for me. And then, of course, being able to walk over the bridge that your father pretty much built during his administration is a pretty neat thing as well. And not to mention, had some pretty good meals down there too, outside the park, obviously.
That's great. Another question, will there be a recording of this presentation available afterward? Yes, we are recording and it will be available on our Facebook event page. Senator, thank you for your time. I know you're very busy and we don't want to keep you any longer, but we do appreciate you being a part of this. And thank you for what you're doing at the Senate.
Thanks for the opportunity. And I'm going to take my video and put my mute on and listen a little bit. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
At this time, I will reintroduce Leslie Reynolds, Acting Superintendent of the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve, Eve West, Chief of Interpretation, Visitor Services, and Cultural Resources for the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve, and Danny Twilley, Assistant Dean of the Brad and Elise Smith Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative at West Virginia University. Thank you again for joining us today. We're excited to talk.
Thanks for having us.
So the first question I have is for Leslie and Eve. Is this just a name change or are there other tangible changes since the switch in park designation?
That's a great question. I would say the only other change has been to areas where hunting is allowed in the park. And Kate, are we able to show the park map?
Sure.
Great. Oh, perfect. Excellent. So this is a map of the New River that distinguishes between National Park, which you can see. Can you all still see the map?
It looks like it went dark for a second. Let us give it one more try.
All right, thanks. Perfect. Great, thank you. So if you look at this map, it distinguishes between National Park, which is darker green, and I think we went dark again, okay, and the National Preserve, which is the lighter green. And you'll realize that most of the park is a light green or National Preserve where hunting is still allowed. So that's roughly 90% of the park. The four dark green areas starting at the bottom of the map and moving up, including Sandstone, Grandview, Thurman, and the largest green area, the lower gorge. At Grandview, 400 acres have opened up to hunting that weren't before. And that's from the Glade Creek area right below Grandview up the Little Laurel Trail until you get about half a mile from the top of Grandview. You'll also note that the small section of light green at the top of the map that borders the lower gorge, this is a 300-acre area that was popular to hunters and was retained within the National Preserve in order to allow hunting to continue. Information about hunting is found on our webpage. It's right on our homepage. So right when you click on the webpage, it's right there. And you can read about the hunting rules and regulations. And there's a link to the maps, which shows where you can hunt.
Great, that's great to know. And just for anyone who is listening or watching, we will have links available on the Facebook event page afterwards, so you'll be able to access that. Leslie and Eve, what changes and improvements do you foresee over the next several years?
That is a great question. If you could go to the next slide. Okay, so long-term, the Park Service certainly develops projects 5 years out, but it's difficult to forecast at this time what projects will be funded. But I do want to highlight some projects that are ongoing now that I think everybody would be interested in. So as you can see, the popular Kmore Trail that has been closed for the past few years will reopen this spring. And the dated playground equipment at the popular Grandview Day Use area will be replaced with new equipment. So that is exciting. In the upper right corner, you'll see that the park just completed a historic preservation project at Grandview where 30 historic hearths built by the CCC were restored and made usable to the public. And this project was accomplished with funding from the Great American Outdoors Act. So that's something we're very proud of. In addition, the Canyon Rim Visitor Center, the park's most popular information site located to the bridge, will be taking on a new look with indoor and outdoor exhibits tentatively scheduled for installation in December of 2022. And we absolutely look forward to opportunities ahead in 2022. And we also look forward to working with our many partners, state and local officials, as New River Gorge National Park and Preserve continues to provide for enjoyment to park visitors and the community, and to preserve the park for future generations.
That's wonderful to hear, and how exciting all these new developments that are going to be underway because of the park designation. Thank you, Leslie. On the same topic, Danny, this question's for you. Has there been a clear economic impact regionally around the New River Gorge and or across the state of West Virginia?
Yeah, so first, thanks for having me join. So I'm going to kind of answer the state part first, and because it's a little bit easier, because the Bureau of Economic Analysis does an annual outdoor recreation kind of value added study, and this is done across the nation. So what we saw is, in terms of the value added nationally, we saw a 19.5% decrease in 2020, right? People weren't able to move as much. I think there were supply chain issues within purchasing of gear that allows us to go out and do these great things outdoors. So there was increased interest, but the ability to potentially spend some of that money. So that trend is, for the first time, we'd seen actually a downward trend nationally. For West Virginia, what we saw was we actually decreased at a lot less. We only decreased by 11.7%, which really, I think, indicates to what Chelsea was saying. We still had, significant amount of visitors. I think a lot of people were coming here because of the new national park designation. So from a statewide, we kind of beat the trends nationally, if you will, from an outdoor recreation economy from the BEA. So when we look at that locally, I think it's going to take a little bit of time to really understand the economic impacts in terms of what it means. We do know that a study was done in 2018 around climbing and the economic impact of climbing into New River Gorge. And they saw about $12.1 million in economic impact as a result of that climbing. It's really going to be fascinating and that timing of that study is so perfect, because it was pre-designation. So it's really going to be interesting to do a follow-up study on that and see kind of what that changes over time. We also know climbing is now in the Olympics, so we know that is also creating more and more interest as well. So I think over time, we're really going to be able to do that. Now, anecdotally, with the metrics that Chelsea was talking about in the work of her office, what we know in terms of visitations to websites that are surrounding these businesses, that we're seeing this increased interest and visitation to our park, which, we know that when people come, they will spend their money in our local communities. And so I think this will be one of the most important metrics for us to track over time.
That's great. And it's great to have such positive publicity out there. Do you foresee an impact on entrepreneurship in the region, or an uptick in remote workers?
Yeah, so I'll say this. We're very, very fortunate to have some of the greatest whitewater resources in that area, climbing resources. It is an iconic, when you talk in the outdoor community, that New River Gorge is so well known. So what we do know is that from a remote working standpoint, we're so early in that market that I think that time will tell. But let's give an indicator that we just recently was announced. United Van Lines, in their study, West Virginia was the 4th in the country on net gain of individuals. We had more people moving in than we had leaving, and we were 4th in the country in inbound. That is positive in terms of what we're seeing in terms of people's interest in moving and relocating. We know that many of them are going to be doing remote work as part of it, or hybrid work. I think that's also an important component to this, is people can live, work and play in places like New River Gorge, and when they need to go to their home offices, if you will, not home in terms of their house, but maybe to where the company is located, they can easily access it. So again, I think we're pretty early on in that story and what that's going to be looking like. But I think we're following it, and we are really kind of leaning into, if you can work from anywhere, why not here? And so that's the message that we're going to continue to celebrate and promote.
That's wonderful. And what a great message for everybody who's kind of moving into those hybrid roles. My next question is for all three of you. Has there been an impact on infrastructure, utilities, roads, highways, national park facilities, businesses, or in the housing market?
I don't think I can speak to some of those components, but I can speak to my favorite. Infrastructure is kind of the recreational infrastructure and some of the things that are happening kind of surrounding the park as well, because we know that as increased visitors come in, and the senator spoke to it very well, is that we know it's going to have a pretty significant impact on our trails and our access points. And the Great American Outdoors Act couldn't have come at a better time. And so I think one of the opportunities is for what we would consider the gateway communities to further develop and enhance their recreational resources. Because when people start in town and end in town, they spend in town. And that's where we're going to see the really value added. So we're actually, we've worked with the Fayette County team, and we've developed an initial soft surface trail plan to help disperse that use, so people can go enjoy the brilliance of the park, but also have other things to increase length of stay as well. And most of these properties that we're looking at are within, a baseball's throw, if not directly adjacent to the park. And as you know, most of the time trail users, they don't differentiate. And so that's going to be part of, I think, a really key strategy, is supporting the development of recreational resources in and around the park and close to our communities.
That's great. Leslie, Eve, do you have anything to add?
We do. I'll start, and then I'm sure I'll turn it over to Eve as well. I will say that a common theme I'm hearing is the visitation has increased dramatically. And our visitation was up almost 30% over 2019. And interesting enough, in September, it was up 55% from September 2019.
Wow.
Right. Social media is such a powerful medium, and all of our social media platforms are very active. And just the reaches on our Facebook page increased by 60%. Instagram increased by 112%. And our website increased 172%. So that's pretty phenomenal. And there's one page within our website called the Plan Your Visit page, and it increased by 342%. So that social media is a very powerful educational tool that we can use to educate the visitors that are coming here. I'm learning that New River Gorge National Park and Preserve is really becoming a destination point rather than a stopover to see other parks. So that is exciting. Certainly increased visitor use has resulted in increased use of all parks, facilities, roads and trails, climbing areas in the river area. But interesting enough, what I'm being told is that the visitor use is actually spreading out across the park rather than being focused in just one or two areas. And that has a lot of positive benefits. However, the really popular areas are continuing to attract a lot of visitors. The park, I think, has done a great job trying to manage this variety of uses. And primarily, they're really focusing on education through the social media and information outlets. And they've restructured the website so first-time visitors can easily find what they need. They've also added off the beaten path section to encourage use of less visited sites. And they've added a road and trail closure section, which makes it easier for visitors to know where to go and where and what area may be closed. They consistently message here, plan like a park ranger, which is just, have a safety plan, pack in, pack out what you pack in. So those are really, really important themes for us. And certainly, we've worked very closely with the West Virginia Tourism Office to assist with spreading our messaging with theirs. And certainly, we very much appreciate their efforts on our behalf.
Wonderful. Thank you, Leslie. I have a couple questions from the audience. We may not have time to get to all of them, but I do want to get a few in here. So Leslie or Eve, who in the park will be designated to manage the parking and trail shortcomings that Senator Capito mentioned she experienced while in the park?
Eve, do you want to take that?
And Kate, clarify the question for me, please. When you say
Sure.
in the park,
The question is, who from the park will be designated to manage the parking and trail shortcomings that Senator Capito mentioned she experienced while she was in the park?
yeah, we actually have a park interdisciplinary team and park management team that Leslie can speak to that, because right now as acting superintendent, she's of course supervising that team. We work together pretty closely with all of the issues. We put projects together. We put project requests together. So we try to work closely with the community as well. We've definitely had developed a great relationship with West Virginia Tourism Office. But it's really our park management team. We do have, specific positions that are, just for trail management. We have people who have, worked in parks out west that work here that have seen how trails are managed in other national parks. So, we have a pretty good system in place for dealing with some of those issues. And as Leslie referred to earlier, our project planning is usually 3 to 5 years down the road. So, we're planning for projects that are going to be going on, well in advance of where we're at right now. So, but yeah, to answer that question, it's really, we do have positions for just project, or for just trail management. But as a management team, we work very closely together with all of the issues that are park-wide.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
Mhm.
I have one more question and then we'll have to jump to the next person. This one is for Danny. Many are very attracted to the outdoor recreation in this area. While being able to work remotely, that's a huge benefit. However, quality education for children from kindergarten to 12th grade is also a determining factor to attract new residents. How has the state addressed schools while they're promoting remote work?
Yeah, I don't think I'm qualified to necessarily directly answer that. I am going to stay in my lane on this one, but we do know that, that we are looking holistically at, it's a multitude of factors. This is not a single source economic development strategy. We have to look at a multitude of things. So what we're doing is really trying to recognize the opportunities and celebrate those, and still address some of those challenges that we know exist. And I think it's a simultaneous strategy. One really can't come before the other. So we're looking at the ecosystem approach, but I'm not in the position to be able to speak to that directly.
Well, thank you for answering anyway, Danny. I appreciate all of your time. Danny, Leslie, Eve, thank you for being here. Next up, we have Roger Wilson, CEO of Adventures on the Gorge. Welcome, Roger. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everyone.
So, Roger, what's the biggest challenge your business has faced since the National Park designation?
I think the biggest challenge would be with COVID and the new park, hiring employees would be the #1 issue that we've had by far. But I think that's pretty common in America right now.
Right, that has a lot to do with COVID, but National Park as well. And on that same kind of topic, how has the national park designation affected the outdoor adventure community adjacent to the park?
I think that having the national park here, it's a true blessing, and we're so thankful for it every day. It has exposed so many people to the outdoor industry: rock climbing, hiking, rafting, biking, stand-up paddleboard, just driving at the various spots of the park. People are coming here, they're seeing it, they're discovering it. They've discovered this large diamond that was within 6 hours driving time of most of the population of the eastern United States.
That's very well put. We've always known there's a gem here, but now we get to share it with others. What's the best thing you've heard from visitors about their experience in the New River Gorge National Park?
Oh, there's so many. I guess to sum it up, it's the point of discovery that they've discovered West Virginia, and the park has made it possible. We have so many people that are driving here just to visit the park. Example, I was walking through the campground one day last year, and this lady asked me, could I help her carry a picnic table? And as we were carrying a picnic table over to her campsite, I'd learned that she had a family of 4. They were from California, and they were driving straight from California to the newest national park.
Wow.
And it's just stories like that every day. And it just love it. Makes you warm inside.
That is really cool. So where do you see the outdoor adventure industry going in the future because of the national park?
Well, in my little crystal ball, that there are no guarantees in, I really see the next few years being a lot like last year. And I think over time, all of us working together, tourism, national park, all of our partners in the industry, the local communities of Fayetteville, Oak Hill, Mount Hope, Hinton, even Golly Bridge, even though it's not in the park, but it's still physically it kind of is at the base, in Hinton, Sandstone, all of us working together with a common goal. I see the outdoor community in our area really growing into something that's be quite amazing and something we can all be proud of.
That's a great answer, and we have a lot to look forward to. At this time, I think we have a few questions from the audience from our live feed I'd like to touch on. So what are the most popular activities your guests like to do in the park?
Mine? Whitewater rafting is still the number one draw, but I've also noticed that there's so many people in the past have always came to see the big rapids, the lower New River Gorge. Now people are really wanting to come to see the more gentle part,
Sure.
and hang out and just smile.
That's great. Have you found that most guests are from in-state or out of state?
We've always had a lot of in-state, but the new guests, the new folks who are coming are definitely from out of state.
That's great. I think that wraps up our last question for now. So Roger, thank you so much for being a part of this. We appreciate your time and what you're doing in the whitewater industry.
Thank you.
Supporting the exciting things happening around the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve takes a 360 approach that includes community organization partners. So we've invited a couple organizations doing work in the region. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Angie Rosser, Executive Director of West Virginia Rivers Coalition.
Thanks, Kate, and it's good to be part of this conversation. I mean, we always knew we were national park worthy, so it's finally nice to see that realized, and also recognizing that it takes all kind of partnerships to do two things: to protect the exceptional qualities of the natural resource we have in the New River Gorge, and also to make sure that we are second to none in providing a world-class visitor experience. So I've invited a couple colleagues of mine to join in and introduce themselves. Again, I'm Angie Rosser with West Virginia Rivers Coalition. We've been around 32 years plus in West Virginia as the statewide organization dedicated to conserving and restoring West Virginia's exceptional streams. So we do that in many ways, but related to our public lands and New River Gorge, we advocate for policies and investments that promote conservation and outstanding outdoor recreation experiences. We coordinate an alliance called the West Virginians for Public Lands Alliance, which is a collection of over 100 organizations, businesses working together to promote all of the benefits that West Virginians' public lands bring to the state. We also serve in a coordinating role of the West Virginia Watershed Network. So we have 32 watersheds in West Virginia. The New River is one of them, and they across the state are populated with local watershed groups, mostly volunteers who care deeply about their local watersheds and want to educate and get their neighbors involved in protecting those watersheds. And for example, the Piney Creek Watershed Association right there in the New River we're working with, and you'll hear from Elizabeth, who is also working in terms of a local clean water alliance with those watershed groups. And then finally, I just wanted to bring your attention to another way we're getting community members involved. We have a network of citizen monitors who monitor water quality and stream health across the state. We've developed a mobile app that can be downloaded on your phone called the Stream Watch app. You can learn more about this at wvrivers.org. But we found it's a great way for people who love the river, who use the river, to be able to use their phones to document the good things that are happening with the river, and maybe things that they have questions about or concerned about that we can help answer questions or get possible pollution issues addressed. So again, you can check us out more at wvrivers.org. But now I'm going to turn it over to my friend Elizabeth Underwood, because not only do we work with local and state organizations in these community partnerships, those regional and national groups who have an interest and members and presence in the New River Gorge region are important resources to us. So Elizabeth Underwood is the executive director of the New River Conservancy. Elizabeth, if you could give us a quick minute about the Conservancy and your role and perspective in protecting and enhancing the park.
Happy to do so. And first, I'd like to say thank you, Angie, for inviting me to be part of this conversation. I'm truly honored to be in such good company with a panelist, and I appreciate Senator Capito and her work, Roger, and the business that you bring to West Virginia and the wonderful facility of Adventures on the Gorge. And Angie, I think you know I am leading your fan club, and just happy to work with West Virginia Rivers Coalition and the great work that you do for West Virginia any chance that we get. So I am the executive director for New River Conservancy. We are a 3-state organization. So as you all probably know, our headwaters and headquarters are in North Carolina, flowing north through Virginia to the Gauley Bridge in West Virginia. Our board of directors is equally represented from West Virginia, and we have staff members that live in West Virginia. So we really take our work in West Virginia really seriously. You all are luckier than I am because you get to live full time in the wild and wonderful West Virginia. I just get there every chance that I possibly can. So as Angie mentioned, we coordinate the Clean Water Alliance, which is really a collaboration of thought partners from the government, state government, federal government. Leslie and Eve, your colleagues at the National Park Service, are just such great folks and do good work for West Virginia. So that's been exciting to work with that group and to dial in on what we were trying to accomplish. It's really to make the water cleaner for the streams and tributaries of the New River watershed. Thinking about the impact of the national park status, we're having our biannual New River Symposium in West Virginia for the first time at Summit Bechtel, right beside the gorge. So I'm hopeful that a lot of you can come and be panelists on April 10th and 11th as we're in West Virginia. And, you know, again, I truly appreciate the partnerships. There's just a spirit of congeniality and collaboration where you see lots of folks from different sectors coming together to make West Virginia a better state. And it's just such a wonderful treasure for America, for the world. So happy to be part of this exciting time.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And now I'd like to introduce another friend of West Virginia rivers and the national parks throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. Ed Sturley is the Mid-Atlantic Senior Regional Director for the National Parks Conservation Association, and NPCA has been a really key partner on a host of conservation issues, but again has helped us navigate some of the implications of the designation and making sure that the National Park Service has the support it needs. So Ed, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about the new program that you're getting revitalized in West Virginia.
Thank you, Angie. Yes, we're really excited because, you know, somewhere out there listening today is we did just make a new hire. We have a new West Virginia program manager, Samantha Nygaard. And it's so wonderful because I think, you know, what's so great about this webinar, you know, a year later, it demonstrates kind of the unique nature that brought this park together, as the Senator was talking about. So much community collaboration from the local level, from the nonprofits to the economic development to small businesses, all the way up to, you know, the state and now, of course, this great partnership we're seeing evolving with the National Park Service too, and with NPCA. So, you know, we're really excited about this opportunity, and I want to thank, you know, all of you for inviting us to be a part of this. The National Parks Conservation Association, for over 100 years now, has been an independent nonprofit organization advocating for national parks as long as there's been a national park system. And that goes from, you know, the very first national parks to now America's newest national park and preserve here in New River Gorge. And, you know, I think what we're really excited about is, you know, first of all, we have great leadership. It's great to see, you know, the dedication and not to just, you know, the redesignation process we've seen from both, you know, Senators Capito and Manchin, but also their commitment to making this park I believe she called it a, you know, world-class experience for visitors, you know, and we are certainly going to be advocating for that too. And I love, as she said, you know, when you visit now, you see license plates from, you know, all over. And, you know, I have the same experience when I'm also visiting many of those parking lots. And that's, you know, as an advocacy organization, I mean, that's a dream, and that's an amazing opportunity for us and a challenge, you know, to how can we get all of the folks, not just, you know, those who live in the community surrounding the park, but from across the state and from around the country to advocate for New River Gorge and to advocate for more investment and protection of the national park system. So, you know, so we're going to be right there with you all, you know, speaking up for policies that can ensure, you know, clean air, clean water, keeping that park beautiful, you know, protecting wildlife. And then also, you know, most importantly, right now, you know, making sure that this park is a wonderful visitor experience, not just for the locals who, you know, the numbers we saw were incredible, that they're coming back over and over again, but for those who are visiting, to ensure, you know, there are great amenities there, that we can invest in the trails, we can get more money for the National Park Service to invest in rangers and maintenance projects and make this a really, really amazing place, even more amazing than it is now. So so we're excited to continue to advocate there and looking forward to working with all of you to continue to grow as many advocates as possible to take care of this park, not just through volunteer service, but also, you know, by speaking up and telling the rest of the country how magical this place is too, and that we need to invest in it.
Thanks, Ed and Elizabeth. And I'll just close by reinforcing it, you know, it feels like this is just the beginning of a new chapter, and there's work ahead to make West Virginia and the New River Gorge the best it can be. And we've heard a lot about the successes and some about the challenges that we need to tackle. But Kate, what a great panel we've had together to just start that conversation and how we can keep the momentum going into the future. So I'm going to turn it back to you to close us out, see if we have any time for any further questions. But thanks again, everybody, for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie, and our community partners, Ed and Elizabeth. I want to thank again the Senator Capito, and for all of our panelists for your participation. Thank you to the attendees for watching. Please check out our Facebook event page for more information and for links to each organization, and we can address any unanswered questions you may have. Have a wonderful week, and we hope to see you soon in the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve.